Okay, so who and what inspired Impressionism? Let's assemble this puzzle and I'll tell you everything I learned. So today's puzzle, the story of Impressionism. There is a spot the artist in Paris. It's an art jigsaw puzzle. So as far as I can determine from the inside of the box, there should be around 22 either artists or places that inspired the Impressionism art movement. Um, so I'm very excited to see how many of those I can find. I will obviously have to consult the inside of the box because I don't think I know too many of these artists by heart. What I do recognize, and I will put a close up of this one, is this. I think it's the luncheon on the boat. I've got a puzzle of that painting, and there that is. So I've assembled this one previously. I still need to do it for the channel as well. But this is the only painting, as far as I can determine, that I have and which I know by heart, which is shown in this puzzle. But yeah, I'm not going to waste any further time. I'm going to start sorting this puzzle. I'm just going to take out the edge pieces, put it on the side, and while I do that, I will talk to you a little about Impressionism and the history behind that. Okay, so I haven't finished the sorting or flipping all the pieces yet, but what I do see is that all the pieces are the same shape, and there's not much variety in the prongs of and the innies and outies of the pieces. So I just hope that this is not going to be the cause of many false fits. Other than that, I can say that the cardboard seems to be nice and thick. It seems to be very good quality, and it promised to be a very nice build, unless there is going to be false fits. And it is a Laurence King publishing puzzle. So my first one of that, and yeah, let's see how this goes, and cross your fingers that it's not going to cause false fits. Impressionism developed in France in the 19th century and is based on the practice of painting out of doors and spontaneously on the spot, rather than in a studio from sketches. Main Impressionist subjects were landscapes and scenes of everyday life. Wikipedia sums it up as follows. Impressionism was a 19th century art movement categorized by relatively small, thin, yet visible brushstrokes, open composition, emphasis on accurate depiction of light in its changing qualities, often accentuating the effects of the passing of time, ordinary subject matter, unusual visual angles, and inclusion of movement as a crucial element of human perception and experience. Impressionism originated with a group of Paris-based artists whose independent exhibitions brought into prominence during the 1870s and 1880s. The Impressionists faced harsh opposition from the controversial art community in France. The name of the style derives from the title of Claude Monet's work, Impression Soleil Levant, Impression Sunrise. Forgive me if I mispronounce that, which provoked the critic Louis Leroy to coin the term in a satirical 1874 review of the first Impressionist exhibition published in the Parisian newspaper Le Charivari. The development of Impressionism in the visual art was soon followed by analogous styles in other media that becomes known as Impressionist music and Impressionist literature. So that is Impressionism in a nutshell. And let's see how many of the artists and famous places we can identify. Okay, so all the pieces are flipped, and what stands out to me is the greens and the blues. So I think I might start with the sky as per usual, and then the greens thereafter. The edge pieces is also out, and I think there's enough of color differences that I might actually attempt to do the edge first, and then I will insert those from there. The photographer Nader was a colorful figure of mid-century Paris, famously taking to a hot air balloon to create the first aerial views of the city. The first Impressionist exhibition took place in his recently vacated studio. The Moulin Rouge became from 1889 the most famous of Paris's music halls and was most famous for its scandalous dance, the can-can. Post-Impressionist master Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec was an habitué of the cabaret whose stars and nightlife he depicted in posters, paintings, and drawings. Another post-impressionist grandee, Vincent van Gogh, also fell off the wagon in the Moulin Rouge, to which he was introduced by Toulouse-Lautrec while staying with his brother Theo in Paris. Edgar Davis was one of the original set of Impressionists, but while many of the others made their names in landscapes, he focused on the dances of the Paris Opera. The immortal actress Sarah Bernhardt dominated the Paris stage from the 1860s. She was particularly famous for her interpretation of Hamlet. Prince of the decadent writers Joris Karl Huysmans was a great boulevardier and darling of Paris café society, as was celebrated wit and writer Oscar Wilde on his trips to the city. The Folies Bergère was one of the most famous music halls in Belle-Opaque, Paris, and it is also the subject of one of Edouard Manet's most famous paintings. Manet was not actually an Impressionist, but his art was in sympathy with theirs. Bev Morisot, Manet's friend, sister-in-law, and possibly lover, was an Impressionist and is credited with bringing Manet into their circle. The Eiffel Tower was constructed for the 1889 World's Fair and has become the city's most recognizable landmark. The writer and chronicler of the Belle Opaque, Guy de Maupassant, hated the new Eiffel Tower. George Seurat adapted the Impressionist fascination with light to his own unique post-Impressionist style, called pointillism. Seurat used to create entire compositions out of small dabs of color, as with his enormous Sunday Afternoon on the island of Grand Jatte in 1884. Known for his realist novels of French 19th century life, Émile Zola was the journalist who championed the Impressionist cause. Paul de Rondeau was the art dealer who discovered the Impressionists and made them famous. American Mary Cassatt became a prominent impressionist later in the century. Her Boating Party of 1893 is one of her most famous works. American expatriate artists James McNeill Whistler and John Singer Sargent were frequent visitors to Paris and enthusiastic supporters of the Impressionists. Whistler exhibited with them, and the younger Sargent's style was highly influenced by their work. Paul Gauguin quit his job as a stockbroker and fled Paris to pursue his art in the more vivid and colorful atmosphere of Tahiti. Pierre-Auguste Renoir was one of Impressionism's most successful practitioners, capturing the good life of ordinary citizens as they relaxed along the banks of the Seine or in the city's many theaters and concert halls. Claude Monet was the unofficial leader and most financially successful of the Impressionists. He painted all over Paris and the rest of France, but the true heart of his painting lies in the gardens around his house at Giverny outside Paris. Paris itself was often the subject of the new painting, with views of its boulevards, train stations, and other modern sites of the bustling metropolis being captured by the brushes of Claude Monet, Camille Pissarro, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Gustave Courbet. Emperor Napoleon III and his architect and city planner Baron George Eugene Haussmann transformed Paris in the 2 decades of the emperor's reign. They ripped out the old medieval heart of the city and replaced it with wide boulevards and wide stuccoed buildings with mansard rooflines. Charles Baudelaire was a well-established writer and poet by the time the Impressionists appeared on the scene. He admired their new art as much as he despised the new Paris, being created by Napoleon III and Baron Haussmann. Émile Zola persuaded his friend Paul Cézanne to come to Paris in the 1860s, where he met other young artists who would become the Impressionists. Cézanne, however, was never an Impressionist, and his own fractured style of painting, inspired more by the rustic subjects and scenes of his native province, became the heart of what was called post-Impressionism, and the inspiration for the movement of the new century, such as Cubism. Lastly, but not least, I would like to credit the artist of this beautiful painting. The illustrator is Marshall George. He specializes in hand-painted contemporary watercolor techniques and he lives in London. So thank you, Marshall, for a beautiful puzzle. I enjoyed it so much. So this is the 1000-piece Laurence King puzzle, the story of Impressionism. I quite enjoyed it. Like I said in the video, the quality of the pieces are nice and thick. It's good quality. I quite liked it. And the only thing that I can say is that the fit was somewhat on the loose side. I think a pickup challenge for this puzzle might be a hit and miss. So it depends on your personal preference for a close, tight fit. Personally, it doesn't bother me too much, so I don't mind a puzzle not passing the challenge, the pickup challenge. So for me, this was a fun build. I quite enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your time. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.